I finally had the honor of sitting down with one of the most beloved voices in modern astrology, the incredible astrologer and cosmic visionary Pam Gregory. Now, any of you familiar with Pam's work already know that Pam has a rare gift. She bridges ancient wisdom, quantum science, and astrology into one breathtaking, soul-expanding perspective. And in our conversation, she does not hold back, you guys. We explore the powerful Wonky triangle, as she likes to call it, between Pluto, Haumea, and Sedna, and why this configuration could signal a dramatic shift in human consciousness. She shares insights into the role of the lunar nodes in your soul's evolution, the rise of light language, galactic contact, and multidimensional awakening. If you've been sensing that something massive is unfolding, both within you and around you, this episode will help you name it, navigate it, and consciously participate with it. And if you're craving a positive vision to hold on to during these turbulent times, this episode is for you. Get ready. This is more than a podcast. It's a glimpse into the future of humanity, guided by the timeless intelligence of the stars and the beautiful wisdom of a kind, compassionate, brilliant legend in our field. So let's dive in. Pam, welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I am so thrilled that this day has finally come.
Thank you, Amanda. It's joyful to be with you. Truly it is. Thank you for asking me.
Pam, we survey our audience every year to see who they'd like featured on the podcast as an inner circle astrologer. And every single year you are nominated in droves. And so it's such a delight. I know for me and for our community. So again, thank you for being here. And because this is your Astrology Hub debut, let's start the way I love to start with anyone who is coming onto the podcast for the first time, which is with your story. How did you become an astrologer? It is definitely not the career path for many people. So it's always an interesting story to see how you got here.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, it was from about the age of 16, 17, I decided I was going to emigrate to Canada, big skies, mountains, lakes. So the day after university, I got on a plane with $100, knew no one, no job, nothing, landed in Toronto, started a new life. And within the first week, I joined a yoga class, and there was a big guy from Jamaica there. And yoga classes are silent, as you know. But a couple of girls at the end of the class said, that chap is an astrologer. So I went up to him and I said, look, I know nothing about this, but would you do my chart for me? And I saw him the following week, and I remember this like it was yesterday, or it was decades ago, in his tiny, tiny flat in Toronto. And I spent 7 hours with him. And it just cracked my world open. And this happens so often, as we know, with people who, that's how they got introduced to astrology. But he went back in my life and gave me specific dates, and I was just electrified. And he disappeared soon after, and I almost thought he was just an earth angel to reconnect me to this. But it was interesting because he gave me lots of dates, as astrologers do, going forwards. But through a series of house moves, I lost the tape. And finally, after 5 years in Canada, the winters got to me, and I decided I was going to return to England. So I was clearing my flat up to fly home to England. And in clearing the flat up, I found the cassette tape. That's how long ago this was. I found the cassette tape of the reading he'd done for me. So I was playing the tape as I was packing boxes. And he said, September the 18th, I think it was 1983, something like that. September the 18th will be a critical turning point in your life. And within a month, you will be at one of the major highs of your life. And that day was September the 18th. And I was leaving Toronto forever. And a month later, I was sitting at 19,000 feet in the Himalayas.
Oh my
God. So I thought, there's something in this funny old subject. So from that point on, I haven't stopped. I mean, I had a kind of regular day job in the corporate world for about 35 years, but my passion all the way through has been astrology. I mean, that's what I'm meant to do, I know.
Oh, yes, I know too. We all know. It's so clear. It's so
no escape.
When you were in the corporate world, did you talk about your astrology passion? Did people know about it, or were you kind of like in the closet?
In the closet, because I knew it would blow my credibility. And in fact, that gave me the title of my first book, because I did quite well in the corporate world, promoted to the board quite young. But if ever a client discovered, I had this secret passion, they kind of call me over to a corner, and in a kind of conspiratorial whisper, they'd say, "Now, come on, you don't really believe in astrology, do you?" As if, this was confession time and I needed serious therapy. So the Grand Canyon between my growing understanding of astrology and how precious and sacred it was, and the common understanding was just so vast. I thought, so that gave me the title of my first book, You Don't Really Believe in Astrology, Do You?
It's
And
good. It's so good, Pam. How did you decide to just kind of blow it open? What precipitated that?
I just felt so hollow and so dead. I mean, I was doing very well, but I just felt so hollow and so dead. And also, I was working, I've always worked very hard, but I was traveling all over the world. I was teaching management people how to make more persuasive presentation skills. And once they had you there for 11, 12 hours a day, because you only had the hotel to go back to. So although it was going very well, on the flight home, I was always thinking, one day I'm going to go pop doing this, and this is not where my heart is. And so that was the pivot point. And I couldn't be more grateful that I had the courage to do that.
Was there an astrological transit that was correlating with that time?
I think they were huge. There were lots of Pluto transits and Neptune to the midheaven. And yes, lots of very big archetypal stuff. Yeah, for sure. So meant to be, divine timing.
Yes. So you've been witness to astrology for a long time. How have you seen it change? What are you witnessing in terms of people's openness or interest, and how has that shifted through the years?
I think there's much more interest now than there was at the beginning. And it's taken much more seriously now. I think people now need guidance for all kinds of obvious reasons. And because astrology is seen to have some scientific, some astronomical underpinning, maybe that's why it's achieving more credibility at the moment. But also something I feel very strongly in myself, and I'm speaking for myself in my own practice here. I think it's moving, and I hope it will move much more from what are the planets doing to me.
Yeah.
Astrology is fated. I mean, that's why people originally give me a reading of what the planets are doing to me. And I personally very much want to change that into, look, this is just modeling clay. What do we want to happen in our lives, and how can we use it to the optimum? Yes, we have a set pattern. It's like a metaphor often used that we have this unique sheet of music and the pattern is set, but what isn't set is how we play the piece of music. That's where our latitude and our free will comes in. And I'm very passionate about that free will, that latitude. And so if we can start to think about astrology much more strategically, that we are using our prevailing pattern as stepping stones to achieve the dream, to whatever we want to manifest in our lives, then I think that becomes a much healthier relationship, because we know with Pluto moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius, we are so aware we've given away our power to external authorities. And I think that includes the planets.
Ooh, I love that, Pam. There's a debate about whether or not we can or would even want to transcend our chart. Do you think that we are meant to sort of use that scaffolding of the planetary placements in our chart and then transcend it? Or do you think that it's the playing field and we're just meant to maximize it?
Yeah, a great question, Amanda. I think our soul, as part of our soul contract, that our soul chose that moment to be born very specifically to give us that pattern and that parental experience as fertilizer. So I think for me, the pattern is set, but how can we absolutely play that magnificently in our lives? How can we play it to the rafters?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of our lives, we can think, boy, I couldn't have given that another ounce of joy and love and effort into creating the best life the best I could possibly be in this lifetime.
Mm. Do you believe the planets are sentient? Like, do you believe that we're in like a co-creative relationship with sentient beings who are influencing our experience here on the planet, but that we're also influencing theirs?
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful question, Amanda. Yes, I absolutely do. I think they're, yes, they're lumps of matter, but I think they're also probability waves of consciousness that
Mm.
have very specific resonances. It's going back to the old harmony of the spheres. They have very specific resonances, and our birth chart interacts like music with those resonances. And
Mm.
so, yes, I think it is all one consciousness. I think the whole universe is one consciousness. It is absolutely a co-creation. And the better we can, and that's why one of the zillions of reasons why astrology is so helpful, because if we can understand the language of astrology, we can co-create much more fully than if we're just kind of banging around and rubber hits the road and, another smack from life and, I'm a loser. So the better we can understand the language of astrology, the more fully and lovingly we can create a better world. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Okay. We are obviously in a massive point in human history. And I've heard you say things like, this is a historic moment. This is an unprecedented moment. We've never seen things like this in terms of the planetary movement. One of the things that you've emphasized quite a bit, I've heard you talking on other podcasts about, is the geometry between Pluto, Haumea, and Sedna. So I'd love to first get your perspective on the quote unquote dwarf planets and the role that they're playing, because there is definitely some debate within the astrological community about their importance, right? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and then talk about how you see that particular geometry offering an invitation and insights into what we're navigating right now.
Yes, I'm fascinated by the dwarf planets, and I truly, along with Alan Clay, who runs Dwarf Planet University, as many of you know, really do believe that they're a higher octave of consciousness, because my understanding is that it's only when our consciousness is able to integrate these higher levels that we actually discover them. It's a feedback loop. And certainly every time Pluto moves into Aquarius, we seem to discover another layer, another further out bit of space in our cosmos. And so, of course, that's what's happening right now. So for me, they are incredibly instructive in terms of where we're headed. And what I love about them, and there are many more to explore, and Kelly Hunter is doing some fabulous work with this alongside Alan Clay. They're two of the real pioneers, I think, with this. But what I love about the ones I've investigated so far is that, on the one hand, they seem to have a leading edge understanding of quantum physics and how we manifest. So they're very evolutionary in that sense, but they are very involutionary in terms of getting us to remember ancient wisdom of the indigenous people, to go deep into the earth, deep into nature, deep into living in harmony with nature and all of its creatures, and get back to that state of oneness, that sense of harmony with all living beings that the indigenous people know so well. So for me, that's just such a wonderful balance for where I think we're headed as some kind of next generation human. I think that's absolutely where we're at, to remember so much. So it isn't just a going forwards, it's a remembering back as well.
Gosh. And is that because the mythology of the dwarf planets is Earth-based? I mean, why do you think that they're helping us connect with the Earth in deeper ways and oneness and harmony in deeper ways?
Yes, I think, well, many of them are creator gods. And so, if you look at a planet like Haumea, she's very linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility. And in her fire goddess aspect, she was said to birth the eight islands of Hawaii, but also she could birth babies in the myth from all over her body and change herself from an old crone to a young maiden, which I'm really looking forward to. So she has this completely regenerative mythology and archetype. And so, but she also part of her mythology was when the land was laid waste through very poor agricultural practice, and we can see that all over the world right now, she was able she had a magic stick called the Makalai, and she was able to instantly summon wild food from the land, even though it was desolate, and wild food from the seas. And just looking at Haumea, that tells me that there are ways that we don't have to have decades-long slog to turn around the toxicity on this planet. I believe somebody wrote to me the other day, and her husband, and I don't understand this quantum computing thing, but her husband is involved in quantum computing, and almost like homeopathy, he is able to focus his quantum computer on an area of land, and that can be quite a large area of acreage that is just dust. It's been using pesticides, etc. And he can regenerate that land to produce very impressive yield of crops in an incredibly short time. And that instantly takes me to Haumea and her symbolism. So I think we're going to see inventions. I mean, a lot of the young people are coming up with amazing ways to clear pollution and toxicity, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot happening with regenerative farming in pockets around the world. So for me, this shift to a much more fertile earth and understanding of the patterns of nature is going to come back to us much faster than we can ever imagine. It isn't a linear, you could do A, then B, then C, then D. It's not. It's quick. And so that is Haumea. And, if we look at other Algira, that's linked to dream time and the song lines of the Aboriginal people and how they knew that or believed that reality of dream time is more real than what we currently have here. And so that's where you create, and then you bring it back to this 3D reality that we're currently living in, but very connected to understanding the harmony of walking the song lines, relying on nature for natural medicine, that kind of thing. So these archetypes are absolutely magical for me. They're really enchanting. And Selassie is another one. Selassie in myth is mermaid energy. She's the wife of Neptune. She's linked to shimmering, sunlight, moonlight on the sea.
Spell that, Pam.
Salacia. Selassie.
These aren't asteroids. These are different than the asteroid belt, right? They're beyond this?
Yeah, they're largely beyond Pluto.
Largely beyond Pluto. Okay.
Yeah, largely beyond Pluto. And Pluto, of course, is also designated as a dwarf planet these days.
How many do we know of right now?
Oh, I mean, I personally probably only know about 14, 15, but I mean, there are probably thousands out there as our consciousness expands. But Selassie, I actually think is linked to light language. And I've yet to test that out, but that's my theory, that if you have it very prominently in your chart, or say you're receiving a Selassie transit to your Mercury, let's say, I'd like to test out that theory of, is that the time people start to speak light language? Because it's all about this high frequency light.
What is light language for you? I mean, because I think of light language as astrology, period. All of what we're doing in astrology is translating the language of light. But I think you mean something even more specific.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful way to say it, Amanda. People seem to speak it spontaneously, just bang. One day they wake up and speak. And for me, it's quite a significant shift in consciousness where they're just plugging into a higher dimension, and it just comes completely fluently. They don't have to do lessons and study a book. It's just an instant download of a language which from that point on they speak fluently, which is just awesome.
Wow.
And so, there's some and also they're discovering, I just was reading an article in the Scientific Journal a couple of days ago about a very high level of neutrinos, which are very unusual, which are coming onto the Earth right now. And they could be very associated, I think, with this high frequency light as well. So I'm in a real process of exploration. And what I love to do is to go down rabbit holes. And luckily, the people who watch my videos seem to enjoy the same rabbit holes as I do, thank goodness. But I just get really interested. Gosh, that's just so fascinating. And what I love to do is plug together, sort of synthesize the scientific with the spiritual, with different modalities, and put a mosaic together where essentially everybody from their different point of view is saying the same thing. And I think, bingo. But I'm always led initially by the archetypal astrology. You know, you mentioned Pluto, Haumea, Sedna, and that kind of wonky triangle that we've got right now. I was led 2 years ago just looking at those three archetypes by the astrology, and now that appears to be manifesting in our world. So I think, wow, you know, isn't astrology amazing? But I trust the astrology far enough to say I'm going to go with that.
Wow, interesting.
And see where we land.
So you talked about Haumea, but we didn't talk about Sedna. So for people that aren't as familiar with the Sedna mythology, what is the story there, and what is it showing us?
Yeah, it's pretty grisly, to be honest, and there are variations on the myth. But Sedna is the goddess of the deep Arctic oceans, essentially. And she was very picky about a husband, but eventually she was married off to someone who she thought would be suitable and made her many, many promises. But he turned out to betray those promises, and she became very unhappy. So she begged her father to come and rescue her. He came in a canoe, a kayak, and they both set off across the sea, but a big storm blew up. So in order to save himself, the father threw Sedna out of the kayak, and when she tried to hang on with her fingers, he chopped her fingers off.
Oh my God.
Yes, pretty grisly. So the patriarchy via the husband and the father do not come well out of this in terms of, can you trust that male principle? That toxic male. Anyway, she floated down to the deep, and of course she herself drowned, but her fingers became incredibly beautiful new sea creatures of dolphins and whales and turtles. So it wasn't just a transformation as suggested by Pluto, it was a complete metamorphosis of state of Sedna. And so she is now, it is said, to be kind of guardian of those oceans, and sailors are supposed to ask for safe passage when they cross those perilous, you know, Arctic seas. And there was something, I think it was last year. Do you remember that submarine that was lost?
Yes.
And several people died in it. Yeah, and that was in that particular area. That was just as Sedna had moved into Gemini. So there was some, you know, and planets gain potency when they change sign. And so Sedna's myth in particular, together with Haumea's, because if Haumea can birth babies from all over her body and change, you know, revert her age, then she is also talking about a change of state. They are both talking about a change of state, a metamorphosis, and Pluto, we know, is a symbol of transformation. So you put those three together, and they are going to be in that wonky triangle, certainly for the next 3 years, very tightly. And so that said to me, okay, I have to be alert to what happened, particularly over 25, 26, when all the outer planets are changing sign as well, as we know. And the Earth is moving through the galactic current sheet, which only happens every 12,000 years, give or take 500. So there are a lot of big, big cycles happening right now. I have to be very alert to what is happening to humanity's biology as part of this evolutionary leap that I believe we're going through.
What is the wonky triangle?
Okay, right. The wonky triangle is Pluto is currently just in the early degree or so of Aquarius.
Right.
It is square to Haumea in the first couple of degrees of Scorpio.
Okay.
And then we have Sedna right at the beginning of Gemini.
Okay.
And so Pluto is trine to Sedna, air to air, Aquarius to Gemini, and Haumea is 150 degrees quincunx to Sedna. So that's why it isn't an equilateral, it isn't a grand trine, it's a wonky triangle. But nevertheless, I think it's very powerful geometry for where we're headed. And of course, Uranus very soon is going to be conjuncting Sedna. Uranus moves into Gemini in July the 7th, I think. And so that's going to act as an ignition point for whatever this change of state is. And I believe that some of the ingredients for our change of state is going to come from the galactics. And of course, Uranus, galactic, Gemini communication. I think that we are going to have much more galactic connection, communication in whatever form once Uranus becomes conjunct to Sedna.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think we need to make Wonky Triangle a official aspect that we that we study in astrology. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about this galactic piece because I've also heard you speak about this in other places, and I'd love to just kind of dive in. So I've heard you say this change of state that you're talking about is going to be one in which our consciousness is expanded, where we have more multidimensionality abilities to move beyond or move within and across dimensions, that we will have the capacity to connect more clearly with galactic beings or galactic states. Can you talk to us about this? Like, what does this mean? And I know none of us really know, how exactly it's going to happen. But what do you anticipate? What are you seeing? What are you hearing about in your multidimensionality, in your multimodal deep dives and explorations? When you're looking into other fields and what they're finding, what are you seeing there?
Okay. Well, firstly, I think we are already galactic beings. That's where we came from. We are already a kind of galactic hybrid, and we consider ourselves as human, but I actually think we're galactic hybrids. And I've often said that the iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones comes from stardust. Even Professor Brian Cox, who's an English professor who is not a fan of astrology, says that we are made of stardust. So I just deeply believe in my bones, my calcium bones, that we came from out there. So it isn't just that this is a new thing. We've forgotten, we've been blocked. And I've mentioned in other videos that Greg Braden talks about the 24th chromosome coming back online. Cryon talks about this, that about 200,000 years ago, our chromosomes were changed so that chromosome 2 and chromosome 7 were spliced together to leave us with 23 chromosomes, which made us more human, but less multidimensional. So we've been kind of dumbed down, if you like, for a long time. Because of the solar flares, we're at peak of solar cycle 25, and they, of course, are encoding these very new light codes. They are acting as ingredients for our evolution because they're stimulating the DNA to come back online. And already, of course, many, many people channel galactic beings. They channel Palladians, Andromedans, Arcturans. YouTube is full of them. Many of my friends channel galactic beings. So it's not like it's a kind of really weird way out thing. I think it's quite regular these days. But I had a fascinating discussion just last month with a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Clements, who is a very, very humble, sweet, quiet Englishman who was a mainstream theoretical physicist, very much part of academia, specialized in string theory, and was, headed that way in a very mainstream career. And then he started to be contacted by galactic beings, very high-level galactic beings, who are now giving him kind of quantum instructions. They give him downloads to weave with his physics knowledge how to develop and build regenerative devices which can boost our health, protect us against degenerative EMFs, protect us in our home, take us to the still point. They've taught him about coming to the 0 point in your heart, this infinity point within the heart. He's teaching exquisite meditations now. His life has just completely turned upside down, but he talks, they're there all the time. I mean, wow. All the time, just feeding information to him. So a few years ago, that might have seemed to be really kind of crazy, but he has such authority and gravitas as a theoretical physicist. You're thinking, well, he's just a forerunner. He's just a pioneer. More and more of us are going to be doing this. And I think probably doing it quite quickly because he isn't the only person who's teaching this kind of thing about how to connect to our galactic families. So my personal view is because of Uranus moving into Gemini, it's such an obvious symbolism of communication with the galactic beings that's going to be there for another 7-8 years. I think this is going to be a surge in galactic contact, whether it just comes through in our dreams or our meditations or we start to channel, however it happens for each of us individually, that is going to be a jump. Because with all of those outer planets changing sign in the next 15 months, there's going to be some kind of a jump. I mean, we all know this, I think, as astrologers. It isn't just same old, same old. We're not just going back, as astrologers, meteorologists, economists, we always go back to previous cycle and what happened so we can make an intelligent guess as to what's coming up this time. I don't think this is same old, same old. I think this is, we've changed train track now. We're at a very different point as a kind of jumping off point for our consciousness. And I think it's going to come in lickety-split. I think it's going to come in really quickly.
I don't know about all of you, but when I hear stories about galactic beings communicating, first of all, I think it's so cool that they chose this man and the kind of information he's getting is perfect for his training. It's perfect for what he's studied his whole life. But I always think, well, pick me. Like, can I go? I want to hear. What would you say for anyone wanting to sort of like till the soil and create a fertile space for opening up to this kind of communication? Are you seeing any sort of like consistent pattern in terms of people who do receive this information, or does it seem kind of random?
Well, partly I think it's random. Like light language, it just lands with some people. But normally they've got quite a dedicated meditation practice. So I think this is going to arrive for individuals in perfect timing. Right. So don't, treat it like a yoga class. We're each running our own race. So it isn't, gosh, Mary next to me is way ahead of me. And I'm really, we've got to be happy with where we are, that it's right for us. But I think also I have a mantra of we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. And feel that sense of spaciousness, expansiveness in your consciousness. And every night as I fall asleep, I will set a clear intention that I am open to have my inner energetic pathways taken to the highest place in a way that is perfect for me.
Amazing. I love that so much, Pam. Okay.
That kind of, choose your own wording, but that kind of thing. So in your dreams, you interacting with. I mean, I've mentioned a couple of years ago, I had such a distinct dream, Amanda. It was at the end of the night, and this section of the dream lasted, 30 seconds. It was an empty room, and in the dream I'd walked into it, and it was all just, the only thing in the room was kind of pink, sparkly diamond light. And there was a mirror on a wall, so I walked up to the mirror, and I was pure light. I was the light body. I was pure light. My eyes were just, I'll never forget. It was so, it wasn't like my normal eyesight, which isn't that good. It was pin sharp. It was kind of third eye. And then I started to levitate. I just lifted. And then the alarm went off. And I said some very rude words because I wanted that to continue. But it wasn't just a promise for me. It was a promise for everyone.
Right.
Because we are headed towards less density and more light body. Because that dream was so distinct, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life, and it was so compelling. This is the promise for your future, for humanity.
Pam, why do you think we forget? Why do we, if we're galactic beings and we come from the stars and we have all this capacity within us, why have we been dumbed down? Why have we forgotten from your perspective?
Right. Yeah, I think there are certain interests in the world who, I think the world divides into service to self and service to others. And I think there's certain interests in the world that are service to self and want to keep control and power. And the way they keep control and power is to keep the population of the world in fear. So I'm always talking about, here's another big scary thing. Here's another big scary thing. So we mustn't energetically feed the next really big scary thing because there's just going to be another really big scary thing. We just make it bigger. So coming back to our sovereignty and our own inner power this is the year to do that. This is the year to reclaim our power. And it doesn't have to be shouty out there with a placard and, waving and being, it just very quietly takes back our authority to say, I know who I am. I have a clear sense of purpose. I know why I'm here. with this particular set of gifts and abilities. I'm going to connect to other like-minded people who are also taking back their power. And we are going to, in a very Aquarian way, going to create a grassroots movement where there are pockets of freedom, of community, of people coming together to buy land, grow food, share resources, and it's beautiful because it's happening all over the world. I know it is because people write to me. I'm in a similar group to that myself, and because people write to me, I contacted a chap a few months ago who arrived at my door, a very young chap, and said, "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm Arcturian." So come on in and have a cup of tea. So this isn't so strange to me, but if we look at the Aquarian model, it is decentralized and grassroots up. And if it's decentralized and grassroots up, that must mean that we as humanity, as ordinary people on the ground, have stepped back into our sovereignty, because we're done with being told what to do. We're just done with all of that hollow shell of the toxic patriarchy. I mean, aren't we? Well, I am. I am.
I think we've been done for I feel we've been done for a long time. It finally feels like things are starting to shift. I heard you say one time that you can sometimes be accused of being too positive. What do you say to that? Because I personally find it absolutely delightful and find it very inspiring to be around people who are seeing a brighter future for us. But what do you say to that sort of critique, I guess I could call it?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, because we are only going to create a better world if we are living in that kind of love, joy, peace, compassion. And I think I've created a life for myself now where I live in a beautiful area of 150 square miles of ancient woodland and open land. It's absolutely beautiful, full of wild deer and donkeys and wild, it's beautiful. And I've created a life where every morning, non-negotiable, I walk in ancient woodland and connect to my favorite trees. And it's out in any weather, actually, in rubber wear, ghastly weather. And I go of the dragonfly stream and up to the, I just love it. I love all of it. And usually I'm on my own, and that's fabulous. And then I just sort of come back and work. But within my tiny hamlet, nobody really has a clue what I do here. I mean, they probably just think I watch Netflix and, which is actually really refreshing, because nobody ever asked me what I do. It was fabulous. It's really refreshing not to have any kind of pressure. And so I've just created this, and of course I've got lots of friends, but I've created this bubble where I can dominate my days with love, joy, passion, compassion, gratitude, peace, and things don't interrupt me too much. People send me stuff all day long, but if I sense it's taking my frequency down, I'll just stop straight away. I will not have my frequency taken down, because everything cascades from your frequency, your state of being, everything. That's your start point. It's quite Buddhist in a way that if you get this right, everything in your reality changes for the better. Everything. Because it's an inside job. And of course, I couldn't live so easily like this if I was still in the corporate world, commuting to London 1,000 miles a week, stress, harassed, deadly, it would be much, much harder. So people can say, well, it's all right for you, Jack, but yes, but I've created, this lifestyle over some years. But my focus is 100% on my inner state of being. And I will therefore milk little simple things, almost in a childlike way. I mean, it's long, long winter here in the UK. We're almost into spring. And I was out this morning, and you can just start to feel the electricity of the new leaves coming, and the woodpecker's building his nest, and the birds are singing. And I'm like a 3-year-old thinking, wow, this is just so beautiful. You can feel the life force coming through nature. And to keep that sense of wonder and awe, I think keeps me in a very positive state. It brings me to tears sometimes, and I can sit on the bank of the river and watch the birds humming, and it's just, and the dragonflies in the summer. A stream near me is one of the principal streams for dragonflies in Europe, and that's just magical. So I think I try and just keep this very simple, magical state. And therefore, my day-to-day reality is pretty peaceful. But I mean, life has not been easy. Don't think I was born with a silver spoon in life that goes in. And it's because it hasn't been easy that I've worked so hard to cultivate or remember these very simple principles, because it was very difficult for many years, which, is not relevant. I won't go into now. But, wisdom doesn't come through ease. It comes through challenge. Just all that, but the idea that your inner reality creates your outer reality is just a mirror, I am absolutely passionate about.
Hey there, Astrology Hub. I'm Catherine Plano, founder of Rise and Thrive Coaching Academy. If you've ever wanted to turn your passion for astrology into a meaningful, sustainable career, we've created the perfect pathway just for you.
And then I was listening to Astrology Hub, and then I heard you with Amanda, and I was like, oh, now I've found the way to integrate both of them, my passion for astrology and my passion for coaching.
You have the tools, which I think you've done a great job of providing, and all the modalities, and you can articulate those conversations in a much more rounded way and reach people all over the globe, opposed to just staying in one lane.
This program is grounding my years of alternative and esoteric knowledge so that I can become a mentor for youth using the wisdom of the elements and the stars.
Our next cohort, designed specifically for the Astrology Hub community, begins this May. Spaces are limited, so if you're ready to take the next step towards a soul-aligned, viable career helping others grow, heal and thrive, then visit riseandthrive.com.au/AH to reserve your spot today. And we can't wait to welcome you in.
What do you say to people who say, well, what about all the suffering? And, that's always the rebuttal.
It's horrendous. And, there by the grace of God go you and I. I mean, we could live in Palestine. We could live in the Carolina, Northern Carolina, the terrible extreme weather. So, those are horrific things. And there's absolutely no doubt that atrocities are happening all over the world. And I'm often asked that. But two answers to that, really. Firstly, firstly, it opens my heart with great compassion. I think it does that for a lot of people. And I have a nightly free meditation now for 15 minutes, and we just pour love and peace and compassion into those extreme situations. So at least I can do that. I can facilitate that. But if I go into the horror, if I go into completely losing myself in the horror of that, I'm not going to help me. I'm not going to help the people on the ground. I'm not going to help the collective frequency. I'm not going to help anything. And I can get quite quickly into a default, ain't it awful, despair, and we're lost, and there's no hope. I could do that very easily. But, I can't allow myself to do that, because then I'm no use to anybody. So, and then I think, well, practically, what can I do? I mean, it's very difficult to go out there to deliver aid on the ground. A whole aid convoy was murdered recently trying to get aid into Palestine. I think it's very hard to get money often to the people on the ground, because it's kind of filtered off into admin or, wherever it disappears to. So what can I do? What can I do? Well, luckily, I've got a sizable following, so I can organize, all for free at home. I can organize that following to say, at this time, every night, your particular time zone, for 15 minutes longer if you like, we are going to focus on love and peace and compassion to people in horrific extreme circumstances all over the world. That I can do. And so can everybody, actually. Everybody can do that. And if you look at the work of Lynn McTaggart with all the evidence she has about mass meditation, we can all do that. So then I feel empowered and help to empower other people. Let's go do that.
God, Pam is so good. So it's basically that question we can all ask ourselves, what is mine to do?
Yeah.
What is mine to contribute here? And you're right, not everybody is suited to address the issues the same way. And so it's really, what am I designed to do? What have I built in my life that can be a vehicle to help? And what do I need to do to stay in a state where I am capable of being of service, right? Because like you said, if we just allow ourselves to go down in it, then I always think of the ocean because, you know, I live in Hawaii and the surf culture is very strong. And there's now, you know, jet skis that help surfers get onto waves that we could have never ridden before because they were just way too big and no one would be able to paddle into them. So now they use the jet skis for places like Jaws that have these massive, massive waves. And so these surfers are defying what was previously thought possible, right? And I'm hearing you say a lot of this today. There's going to be things that happen. It's not linear. We're going to find solutions that help us make quantum leaps. So I'm giving an analogy with what happened with surfing. Anyways, I think about the fact that there's the ones on the jet skis who are there to help the surfers should they tumble and fall into the huge waves that it would be life-threatening. I mean, they would lose their lives most of the time or be very injured. And so the ones on the jet ski have to stay strong. They're there to actually pick up the ones who are in the huge white water. And so when we are in a situation, like you said, you're in nature, you're in this beautiful setting, you've set up your life so that you can be of service in this way, it's almost like your responsibility to maintain that strength, to maintain that capability to go in on the jet ski and help the people that are in the whitewater. And in this case, by organizing meditations and keeping the frequency high and doing these things that we know over time shift the entire planet so that those kinds of situations aren't happening anymore.
Like absolutely, absolutely. And I've often said we need to get to a state of consciousness where war is unthinkable.
Right.
Killing another human being, killing another being is unthinkable. That's where we need to get to. And I know we can go through timeline jumps to do that. And thank you for reminding me, Amanda, because yes, I do. I have a great sense of spiritual responsibility in what I put out there, because if I feel people are not going to be better at the end of my video than when we started, I won't put it out. I have to leave people better than I found them.
Oh.
I have to do that.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm not going to put it out because it's all about frequency and energy at the end of the day, isn't it? It's all about frequency and energy. And I just caveat, I do want to say, obviously, if you've been through a bereavement or you've been caught up in some of these horrors personally, you have to honor that. You've got to process that and honor that. But just in general, these are the kind of principles I stick to. And yeah, I do feel huge responsibility. If I'm going to be out there in public view, I'm going to make it positive and worthwhile. Otherwise, I'll just go for another walk in the woods.
Right. Well, and when people are going through it's not, we all go there. We all go through hard times. So the knowing that there are people holding you, like even people you don't know, there are strangers holding you. They're sending you love. They're holding you in compassion. They're there. It's like sometimes we're the surfer who needs the help and sometimes we're the one on the jet ski, right? So I love what you're saying, Pam, because I think if we all lived our life this way, did I leave that person that I just checked out at the grocery store a little better, or did I leave that person a little worse? And really just having that honest reflection of what we're contributing in our little corner of the world. And I just love
it. I've got a really cheesy phrase, really cheesy: be a smile millionaire.
Oh,
smile millionaire, because it costs nothing and it just lifts people a little bit.
Does.
And all your little interactions at the grocery store with a neighbor, whatever, it's just a free thing. And it really does help people's frequency lift a little. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we could talk about the current state in the age of Aquarius and we could talk about these forever. And you've done a lot of amazing videos on them. So I encourage everybody to go check out Pam Gregory's YouTube channel if you haven't already, because wow, just a wealth of amazingness there. I'd love, though, to shift a little bit and talk about the lunar nodes, because I know that you are very passionate about their role in our lives and how they impact our evolution. And so I'd love to just hear you speak about this a little bit as well and share your perspective with our community.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I don't know how it was for you, but for me, when I was initially studying astrology, really the nodes were barely talked about in Western tropical astrology. You know, I didn't learn anything. There weren't any classes on them. We didn't have any exams on the lunar nodes. It just kind of passed me by. Whereas obviously in Vedic and Indian astrology, they are the most dominant thing. So a few years ago, I started to get really interested in them. And boy, did that take me on a deep dive. That really took me on a deep dive, because that's my second book, How to Co-Create Using the Secret Language of the Universe, which I feel to be the nodal axis. And that's a workbook, so you can work with your own chart with the book. And so it really did take me on a deep dive, because I started to almost see the birth chart as I was writing that book morph from a circle to a kind of teardrop shape. And the pointy bit was the north node, your compass needle. And everything else in the chart became the cavalry, backing up your north node. Because for those who aren't familiar, the nodal axis is created by the orbit of the moon. It's like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the old-fashioned sewing machines that kind of bobbed along, and the moon's orbit goes through, cuts the ecliptic north and south, like an old-fashioned bobbing sewing machine. So the south node brings forwards in your life the skills, the gifts that you've mastered in previous lifetimes, and they're not to be dismissed. They're still there as familiar gifts to be integrated into this life. But the virgin territory, where we are supposed to head to achieve soul satisfaction in this life, is your north node. That's your compass needle. And so I was actually writing this while I was going through an inverse nodal return, which is when the transiting north node comes to your south node. And that's a time where mystical stuff can come up in a very big way. It's a time when a lot of past life material can start to come in, particularly if there's any past life issue that is leaking into this life and causing problems in this life. And it was a whole, it could be a brilliant movie, actually, but it was all connected to a past life as a Cathar Perfecti and what happened in that lifetime, and where a very large number of people, 800 people, were massacred. And that's exactly on the patch of land where I bought a French house. I mean, like exactly on the same field.
Whoa.
Yeah, so a long story. So I won't go into that again now. But anyway, so it can bring up a lot of past life issues. It can bring people into your life from past life or parallel lives, however you're viewing it. And so there's a sense of fate, there's a sense of destiny about your nodal axis. But the important thing is, see your north node by sign and by house as your compass needle. It's virgin territory, and therefore it can feel unfamiliar and a little uncomfortable. You want to lapse back to the south node because that's really cozy and you've done it before. But this operates at the soul level rather than the personality level. You've got to head for your north node to really achieve satisfaction in your life. So, for instance, my north node is in Aquarius. Hey presto, I do something weird, astrology, ruled by Aquarius, and it's in the third house. So I speak, you know, and I've got Mercury on the world axis at 1 degree of Aries. So, you know, so that's how you start to see all of the other planets as the backup. And I just don't know what kind of deep rabbit hole I went down in writing that book, because it took me on a very deep dive. So it isn't just about seeing where that falls in your birth chart. You can then start to look at things like, okay, the transiting north node, which has an 18.6 year cycle, is going around all the time. What does that mean for you in your birth chart? So, for instance, when you are going through a nodal return, which means that every 18.6 years after your birth, you will be having a transiting north node coming back to your natal north node. So that's going to happen at the ages of 18, 37, 55, 74. And that's when you feel, I'm absolutely on track with my soul's mission. This is, I feel on purpose. Everything's very clear. I feel aligned. Opportunities are coming in. Great times when you have that nodal return. Really great times of, it's so clear where I'm meant to go. And then at each square point, so when the transiting north node comes to 90 degrees to your natal nodal axis, those are times when they're crossroads very often. And all of these things are happening at the soul level rather than the individual level. So that's like a crossroads where you feel the life lived up to now is becoming a bit hollow and stale. You're going around the hamster wheel, and you know you've got to break new ground to get more soul's growth.
So how many years after the nodal return is that? Is that going to be?
The quarter point is going to be every 4.5 years after that. So to give you the ages,
Yeah.
going to be the age of 4 when you wouldn't really care, 13, 23, 32, 41, 51, 60, 69, because you've got the waning square and the waxing square.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the inverse nodal return is when the transiting north node comes to conjunct your natal south node. That is really mystical. That is really mystical. And that's when a lot of past life connections can come up. And that feels like a big closure in this life, end of an episode. It's the closure of the deep past. And by that, I mean past life issues, which again could be affecting this life. And it feels like the fool in the tarot, where you're just kind of stepping off a cliff edge and saying, I don't know where I'm going from this point on, but I've closed off all that has been, because it's just dead in terms of it's no longer fertile ground for my soul's growth. And so that happens at the age of 9, 27, 46, 65, and 83. And each of these, the nodal return and the inverse nodal return, last about a year, although they're only exact for about a month when it's, the transiting node comes onto your north node or your south node. The feeling lasts for about a year, 6 months applying, 6 months separating. At the soul level, there's a kind of rumbling at the soul level of something has to change. And these are really big life pivot points, I have to say. I got married at my nodal return. I got divorced at my next nodal return, and both were good things to do at the time. So, it isn't that they're deep and they're soul-based, but they actually form incredibly powerful pivot points in your life because they affect your whole state of being, really.
Are these the kind of things that kind of happen whether you want them to or not, or are they ones that you need to sort of be aware of and make choices around, like make choices for your evolution? Or is it the kind of Uranian thing where it comes in and everything changes and you didn't really have a say in it?
Yeah, really good question. There's a much greater sense for me, I think, of fate and destiny with the nodal transits than with most of the planetary transits. I might exclude Pluto there because Pluto's pretty fated, but I think there's a much greater sense of fate and destiny. However, the choice is still up to you. If it's a nodal square, or you're still going to stay in that dead marriage, your choice. But the marriage being dead is really, really clear.
Okay, interesting. So on my nodal return, I started Astrology Hub.
Boom.
Yes. And so I'm just finishing up the nodal reverse, though.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is an interesting moment. And I'm definitely seeing past life weavings coming into this dimension of reality that I'm aware of right now. So that's an interesting thing. And what I love about this, these kind of, I think of them as almost like life cycle transits, meaning we're all going to go through these gates. We're all going to go through these thresholds. And there's like nature's built-in rites of passage. And so I love even just knowing that, okay, I think you said 55, I'll have another nodal return.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's exciting to think about, okay, what can I be doing now to set myself up for a really amazing, like, catapult in experience, a big evolutionary leap, just knowing that that's going to come, when I'm 50, I'm 47 now. So
Yeah, beautifully said, Amanda. Because yeah, they are major choice points, and whatever you're doing, your next nodal return will take you to the next episode. That
Right.
and spiral upwards versus setting up Astrology Hub. It's
Right.
spiral upwards, and
Right.
it's really exciting. But if you look at it in terms of the house and the sign, and then look at the rest of your chart and say, okay, what else resonates to that?
Mm.
You know, if that's in your 10th house for you, is it in your 10th house?
So, and this is another question. Which house system do you use for this? Because depending on the house system, it's either in my 8th or my 7th.
Okay, sounds like it's in your 8th, doesn't it? Spirituality.
That one is the one that resonates the most. It's
Okay.
it's North Node in Libra.
Right.
I also have Pluto in Libra.
Okay. Okay, so it's the go-between, and you are a master. Pluto, you're an authority in that field, in the field of spirituality. That's how I would read that. And you're the go-between, aren't you, between the audience and the person you're interviewing?
Yeah, go-between for sure. Yes. Yes.
So it's fascinating. But, you know, for instance, mine is in my 3rd in Aquarius, as I say. So with Aquarius, I'd look to Uranus, its ruler. What's that doing? Is that strong in the chart? It's very strong in the chart. It's the 3rd house. So do I look to Mercury and see the condition of Mercury to reinforce that 3rd house-ness? So I use Placidus. I've always used Placidus. I found that the most reliable. But you start to use the numerical alphabet of astrology to find your reinforcements, if I'm making sense. You know, does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
so
we have this 11thness, you know.
Yeah, we have a North Node. That North Node placement is a sign in a house.
Yep.
The house is ruled by something.
Yep.
So you look to that as a reinforcement of that North Node.
Correct.
If there's it's in a sign, that sign is ruled by something. So you look at that placement as a reinforcement, and then you look at any significant aspects to that North Node. Yes.
Totally. That is exactly what my book is about.
Okay, great.
Exactly. Exactly that. Because I wanted to do something, exactly that thought process. I wanted to take people from pretty much zero, knowing nothing about the nodal axis, and throw the ball a very long way to take them deep.
I like that. I mean, one of the first books I read, God, what is it called? Oh, I feel like it's a book that a lot of people have read about the lunar nodes. And it was so this was in the beginning of my astrological journey. Jan Spiller.
Yes, very good.
What's that book called? Do you remember?
It was a great book.
It's something about evolution, I think. Anyways, I remember being so humbled reading about my South Node in Aries. It felt like someone was able to see through to like all these blind spots that I didn't want to acknowledge about myself, but like the thing where I can just like put blinders on and just go and kind of bulldoze my way. I was like, oh, oops. Yeah, that's definitely.
You're a pioneer. You're a pioneer. You set up astrology. You're a leader. You've set up. So it isn't that you dismiss your Aries South Node.
Right.
You incorporate it, but in a probably more harmonious way, because your North Node's now in Libra.
Exactly. The awareness of that South Node enabled me to be aware of those tendencies that might be the more shadow aspects of Aries, right? And yes. And it was such a, like you're saying, such a confirmation of the power of astrology, because I just went, oh my God, like this is so right on. This feels so resonant. And I love that you don't actually have to know your birth information. You don't have to know the details. It is an easier entry point because of that, especially for our friends that don't have their birth times. I always feel like, you know, they can sometimes feel left out of the party because they don't know their birth time and maybe they've exhausted their options. But I love that this is such a powerful tool. So your book, how do people get that book and the workbook?
Yeah, it's all in that book. It's all how to co-create using the secret language of astrology. So very easy to find online. There are lots of sellers across the world. So you go and you can download a free birth chart from my website and off you go. But something else that might be helpful for people, Amanda, and you and I were talking about it, you know, when we had our first contact a while ago, first conversation, and something that I really found works incredibly powerfully in synastry is the nodal axis. I just like super glue. just like super glue. Even when there's nothing else that connects. Often I've worked with couples who are crazily in love and they've been together, you know, for many, many years. And you go through the normal synastry grid of how do the suns link up and the Mercuries and the moons and the Venus, you know, you go through all of that stuff. And if there's nothing, you know, one of the first things I look at now is the connection to the nodal axis. Because if somebody's planets are conjunct the other's nodal axis or the other way around, that is an indicator of a past life connection. And it's like super glue. This deep sense of familiarity of, I have known you for 1,000 years.
Okay. So is the design of that or the intelligence behind that, so bringing people into our lives where we have these very karmic connection points, right? And past life connection points, is it brought into our life to help us, to encourage us to sort of iron out some of the potential like knots that we might have with this person energetically from other timelines? What's the function of it?
Yeah, great question again. I absolutely believe that's true. I mean, I know that in my own experience, because when I first met my husband, it was actually at a meeting at work. He was the new chief executive and I was head of department. And apparently he looked across the table at me and said to himself, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And we hadn't even spoken. And I absolutely know, I know of 2 of the past lives we had together. So the dance goes on. It's that sense of destiny and fate. The dance goes on. And for sure, there were things to iron out. Absolutely. So yes. So we reincarnate until that particular episode with that soul is complete, as it were.
And is it with a specific soul or is it with an energetic pattern? Meaning, let's say your husband came into your life and you had this connection and you had decided not to marry him or get involved with him. Would that pattern have shown up for you through a different character? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it a pattern that exists or is it specific to a individual soul?
Yeah, it's a really fabulous question. I don't know the answer to that. My sense is it's the individual, but that's just my sense. But you may well be right that it could be the pattern. It could be the energetic pattern that's playing out. And so, yeah, this is really fascinating because you can also start to look at, and it gives you a very good clue of what the past life connection was. Say if somebody's Venus, your partner's Venus or potential partner's Venus is on your south node, I would read that as being lovers or spouses in the past life. I've seen that so strongly in partners' charts, not my own, but other people I've looked at. So, and again, that's like super glue. And it brings them together. Even if there's like a 30-year age gap or something like that, they were lovers and they've come back again. The dance goes on. And if it's Saturn, and say it's your daughter, is your daughter Saturn on your south node? Was your daughter your father in a past life? And she's quite moralistic and disciplined. And so you can enrich the relationship with your children if you've got those nodal connections, which very often families have because you've all reincarnated in a family group.
Right.
I often talk about a dear friend of mine. My moon, which is at 2 of Pisces, is conjunct his south node. And I absolutely know I was his mother in a past life, in a very poor life in Ireland. He feels it too. He works in credit card processing. He has no interest, 0 interest in any of this stuff. But we have a deep sense of connection, I am sure, because of that past life. And he's like a younger brother to me almost, translates the practical world because I have no earth in my chart. So these connections are very strong. And so often you look to the nodal axis to understand. And, astrology can only take us so far. And then you have to ask your dreams, your meditations to take you further in understanding that relationship, but they can really enrich your understanding, particularly if it's a slightly challenging relationship. Yeah. They can enrich your understanding of what's going on.
Is there a risk of us getting stuck in this like hamster wheel of just repeating these things over and over?
Possibly, but I think the awareness helps you break out of it, actually.
Yeah.
So like anything, once you've brought something to consciousness, you can observe it and do something with it and release it. So yeah, I think it's, you know, say if your daughter did have her Saturn on your South Node and she was kind of quite irritating because she'd keep kind of organizing you and telling you what to do, that could be extremely irritating. But if you really understood she was your father, that gives you much more compassion and understanding of that, of where she's coming from, and seeing that pattern play out. So I actually think it's a really helpful thing to do. I ran a forum for a little while, a couple of years after I'd launched the book, and just people loved it, poured out their stories of all their, you know, their loved ones' connections. It was fascinating. So it's an interesting aspect to the nodal axis, I think.
Yes. Okay. So good. Another deep dive for any of you interested to go down. Pam, let's bring this back. We've been doing a Legends series at Astrology Hub where I'm just so, it's the Capricorn sun in me, just so keen to preserve some of the wisdom of some of our incredible wisdom keepers here in the astrological community. You, to me, are just, talk about a pioneer, someone to me that feels on the forefront of where astrology is going. So I would love to ask you what you're seeing in terms of astrology. Do you feel just like us as individuals we're on the verge of a change of state, and we're in the process of a change of state? Do you also think astrology is at that edge, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, fabulous. Not sure I have any great answers yet, but fabulous. Yes, I absolutely do. I think astrology is going to change greatly in the coming years, partly because, you know, we're moving away from this external authority reference and taking back our sovereignty from the planets as well. So I think this sense of fatedness and destiny and planets doing things to you is going to move away, and I would really encourage that as well, to feel sovereign. I think we, with our greater understanding of deep space, because I think it'll go beyond the Kuiper Belt with our stronger telescopes and our greater understanding of the cosmos, I think we will develop a much bigger understanding of the cosmos than we have ever had before. And it's interesting, I'm speaking to Dr. David Clements again next week, in fact, and I'm going to ask his galactic team through him, because he's got all those connections and he understands theoretical physics, how astrology actually works in their understanding.
Ooh.
What the planets actually are in terms of probability, waves of consciousness and frequency, etc.
Right.
And I think we could start to see the entire universe, the entire cosmos, as one piece of music, as one piece of harmony. And each of us, as a fractal of the divine, is either in harmony or discordant with that. But the more we can become in harmony through meditation, through breath work, whatever, get an internal sense of physiological harmony, the more we can plug in to that universal harmony, and the whole thing will start to hum. And then our co-creation can go in leaps and bounds as we're working together, collaboratively, Aquarian energy in groups, magnifying the energy to create an incredibly beautiful world, which we've never had before to such an extent. And we're doing it together. We're holding hands and holding hearts and doing it together. So I see astrology as being useful as giving us the sheet of music that's our unique gift to plug in to this Aquarian model. But then we all come together and we hum, we harmonize, we hum. And so I've still got L plates on with all of this. I'm just at the very beginning of what I think is the next episode for humanity with astrology and many things actually, but with astrology, I think there's a giant leap we are going to, because if you go back to one of the times when Pluto was last in Aquarius, that was 1543, and Copernicus publishing his heliocentric theory of the Earth goes around the sun. That was paradigm shattering. We are now in paradigm shattering times. And I'm just at the beginning of where that could lead us. And I don't have a scientific background. I mean, there are people way, way smarter than me who can understand all this stuff. But I do think we are on the edge of a much greater understanding of our consciousness. Yeah.
Wow. That's so exciting. I love it. I love it. I keep thinking, this might have been obvious to other people, but for me, my love, actually, who I have a nodal reverse with. So
Okay, there we go.
nodal reverse. And he's not an astrologer, and he's not, super versed in the language, although he has always appreciated it deeply. But he looked at the glyph for Aquarius. I showed him the glyph for Aquarius, and he goes, "Oh, coherent frequency." And I went,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, actually, that's it." And so when you're
It
talking about being in discord or in being in alignment, what was the word you used? Discord or
Harmony.
harmony with our sheet of music individually, and then with each other collectively, that just feels so Aquarian. It's like, well, yes, exactly. Okay, Pam, for our community out there who is interested in potentially practicing astrology or becoming astrologers, do you have any guidance for budding, upcoming new astrologers to the field?
Well, follow Astrology Hub for a start.
Oh, thank you.
Follow Astrology Hub and Amanda, because you have some, fabulous interviews and absolutely 5-star astrologers. Really, really recommend that. And, there's some very good content on YouTube, really good content. I think the Astrology University has some good content, very good astrologers. But I would find someone, an astrologer on YouTube, because that's all for free as well, that you resonate with.
Mhm.
Because if you resonate, then it's easier for you to learn from that person. But I would really recommend studying astrology as a structured language, because it is a language, isn't it, Amanda? So
Yes.
rather than just picking up, separate pieces of information, you actually have a structured journey, because there are other bits, otherwise there are bits of the grammar that you might be missing. And so, but you have a very full plate in terms of offering people that. So just be consistent, use your own birth chart as the model, and stick with it, because it will enrich your life. So I don't know what my life would have been without astrology. It would have been so much less. It's been profoundly enriching in a way I couldn't possibly have imagined if I hadn't followed this course.
One of the things that makes me so I just delight in, I revel in, is experiencing your enthusiasm for this. After so many years, there's still this childlike enthusiasm to continue exploring, to continue expanding. I can't think of that many other fields where, and maybe I need to do a bunch of interviews in other fields to find people like this. But when I first started interviewing astrologers, I went, oh my God, they're still so in love with this. They're still so enthused about this. Like, that's a good indicator that there's a lot here for all of us to continue going down this path and continue to feel rewarded for that exploration, and for it to just keep growing. It's like the honeymoon that never ends.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, because we're all still students.
Right.
I learn something new every day. I don't know if you do, Amanda. I learn something every single day. So it's infinite, it's never ending. And how exciting is that versus working in a bank or something, that gets very stale and boring. It's
Right.
so, and particularly at this moment in time, it is so exciting. There are going to be new discoveries about science and healing and the cosmos. I mean, it would be hard not to be excited about all of those things that are imminent. We're on a precipice right now.
Yes. Pam, if people want to join your 15-minute meditations, how would they find you for that?
Really, really easy. On my YouTube channel, I have a video 10 minutes long called 15-minute meditation, Sunday meditation, because initially it started off just on a Sunday, but people have asked for it to be every night because there's so much happening in the world. So all you do is join energetically. No Zoom, no tech, no recordings, no nothing. And so you join energetically, and I give a series of suggestions of use a mantra of, we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We're joining with our hands. We're connecting with our hearts. We set a clear intention that this is for your highest good, the highest good of all, and the highest good of the earth. And then we step into feelings of love, joy, peace, gratitude, compassion. And for each person, they put anybody within that circle that they want to uplift and acknowledge the problem of whatever they're trying to help, but don't dive into the horror of it. So keep your state high, keep your frequency high. And do you know, Amanda, it's blown me away because people write back to me and said, you know, they're seeing this incredible grid of light, which is strengthening and expanding every single time they do this. It's so powerful. And other people see very tall, benevolent galactic beings coming in to help us. Other people seeing us setting off over hills and mountains and streams, and more people join us, more animals join us. And it's like this tsunami of love that we're building every time we do the meditation, which is, and you know, I know people can't join every single evening. Life's not like that, but as many as you can, just for 15 minutes, 2 or 3 a week, if you can, because I think there are thousands of people across the world doing this. And isn't that amazing? Because the group energy magnifies our intentions to bring more love in the world.
Wow.
It's that simple. But yeah, it's called Sunday Meditation, 10-minute video on my YouTube channel, easy to find, and that explains all of that.
And that'll tell people when to show up and give them the instructions of what to do. Okay, amazing. Pam, this is flown by. For me, I'm just like, oh my God, I could keep talking to you forever. I know it's late for you there. So, we've already received so much time and beauty and wisdom from you already. I just want to close with if there's anything that you would want to offer to the community, any closing thoughts as we are out there each navigating our own lives and all these big, huge energetic waves that we're a part of, anything that you would want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think just keep on rolling that mantra around your head. We're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. Stay in love in your heart, always be kind, always be joyful, always be grateful. And we are rocking it.
Oh my God, I love you, Pam. Thank you so much. It was worth the 5-year wait.
Is it really 5 years? I'm so sorry.
Really,
I'm so
5
sorry.
years. Literally, Pam, I would just, every year, I had a little meeting invite for myself, reach out to Pam Gregory every January. And so I would reach out to you and say, Pam, we'd love to have you on the show. And you were always so kind with your response. I'm focused on this. I'm too busy. I have so much going on, but thank you. So I just took that as okay, I'll just keep asking, and then maybe someday it'll open up at the perfect time. And I feel like this has been absolutely the perfect time.
Bless you. That's shockingly poor of me, actually. But anyway, I've loved this. I've loved this. It's been great fun. It's flown by. I think we've got over the jumps, and covered a lot of ground. And yeah, I've loved it. So thank you for persisting, Amanda.
Yes. I'm grateful for those Capricorn placements that just keep going. And I guess the Aries South Node probably played a role in that as well. Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. I'm so grateful that you were here for this conversation. I am so grateful that you are a part of our community, and I am so grateful that you have decided to make astrology a part of your life, especially as we move into very uncharted territory as humanity. I think what Pam said, that we have this sheet music, the more we understand it, the more we can read it, the better we can play the music. So thank you for being a part of this. You are absolutely adding to the beautiful hum of the universal symphony that we're a part of. So thank you for that.
Much love, Amanda, and much love to everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.